Good afternoon, everyone. Today we have Dean Hashmal and Pete Peterson of Pepco. Dean and Pete cover the Senior Emergency Preparedness Administration Division for Pepco Holdings. Today they will be discussing how their team efforts help support the fire and EMS departments across this country. Within the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia communities, they have created a program that helps support our efforts in preparedness for our communities. With this preparedness program, they've been able to help teach and educate across this area and region, and specifically to our communities that we serve.
Hello, my name is Dean Hashmal, Senior Emergency Preparedness Specialist. I work for Potomac Electric Power Company in Washington, D.C.
Hi, I'm Pete Peterson, Manager of Pepco's Emergency Preparedness Division.
Today we're going to spend some time talking to you about some myths about electricity, how electricity gets to your house, how electricity is restored after a major outage, should it be man-made or natural disaster such as hurricanes, tornadoes. Some common electrical issues that you face, how electricity gets to your house, and then we're also going to take you and show you the inside of what a substation looks like. We're going to show you how our control center operates and how that electricity is restored and some of the modifications we've made to the system over the past few years in an effort to restore your power quicker and more safely. You'll hear safety a lot of times in this video, as safety is a core value at Pepco and throughout the utility industry. With that also said, although we are speaking specifically about Potomac Electric Power Company, a lot of these
situations.
Thank you. A lot of these situations are very similar across the board, no matter which electrical utility you have providing power to you. Pepco, or Potomac Electric Power Company, provides power to Prince George's County, Montgomery County, which are both in the state of Maryland, and our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. We were first incorporated in 1896, and we have a service territory of right around 640 square miles. In that 640 square miles, we have 9 facilities that we operate out of. We have 156 substations, and we serve just under 900,000 customers. We were incorporated in 2002 when we merged with a company that was called Connective. Connective encompassed Delmarva Power and Atlantic City Electric. Pepco Holdings, or Pepco Holdings Incorporated, PHI, was formed when we were incorporated in 2002. That increased our service territory to 8,340 square miles. More recently, we were purchased by Exelon, a company out of Chicago, Illinois. Now we have other sister companies such as ComEd out in Chicago, BGE, Baltimore Gas and Electric, and PECO, or Philadelphia Electric Company. All that occurred in 2016. So what is electricity? We all take for granted that when we operate a light switch, the light's going to come on, or that our alarm clock's going to go off in the morning and wake us up. But how does that electricity get to your house, and what is electricity? Electricity is the flow of a charge through a conductor placed between two objects having a difference in voltage. Conductors aren't just our wire. Conductors also include people, equipment and apparatus, poles and ladders, and water and trees. The speed of electricity is also impressive. Once you flip that light switch, it takes a millisecond to get to that light, because it's moving at 186,000 miles per second. Electrical arcs have also been measured at 20,000 degrees. That's hotter than the surface of the sun. For our fire department partners out there, your Nomex turnout gear is rated to about 900 degrees and PBI to about 1200. So it's not going to provide you any protection against an electrical arc. So what are the impacts of electricity on the human body? At about 5 milliamps, you can get that tingling sensation, similar to anyone that's ever taken a 9-volt battery and stuck it on their tongue to check it to see if it had any juice left in it. From 10 to 45 milliamps, it's going to constrict your muscles to where you can't let go of whatever it is you're holding on to. And again, remember, this is milliamps, not amps. From 50 to 90 milliamps, you're going to get a lot of increasing pain. And somewhere in the vicinity of 75 milliamps, provided that electricity crosses your heart, it's going to put you in a cardiac arrest and it's going to probably be fatal. So again, less than 1 amp is enough to put your heart into defibrillation. What kind of effects does it have on a human body? Well, we've all gotten a sunburn, and that's a 1st-degree burn. 2nd-degree burns include blistering. 3rd-degree burns are a little bit deeper. Electricity can cause 3rd and also 4th-degree burns, which we don't hear of very often. 4th degree is actually down towards the bone, and that is from an electrical contact going to ground. What has an impact on those electrical contacts are a number of factors. One is the amount of current. The higher the current, the more threatening. The length of exposure, the longer you are in contact, the more threatening. And the location of the exposure, where the current enters and exits the body. The more central to life organs, the more threatening. The next slide, you'll see an individual that unfortunately thought they had a de-energized line they touched, and the electricity went through their arm and exited them in the back of their shoulder. So I'll show you these pictures because there are a lot of policies and procedures we have to follow when we are restoring power so that we don't end up like this unfortunate person. And that is why safety is a core value throughout the utility industry, not just at PHI, Pepco Holdings, or Exelon, or your utility, throughout the industry. We want to send all of our folks home at the end of the day just like everyone else. We want to share information with you and our first responders and so that you can provide safety to your teams and take this information and learn from it. We also share this information with the public through social media, newsletters, and advertising, as well as public speaking events such as this. As far as public safety is concerned, the safety of our employees and our community that we serve is paramount to everything we do. And therefore, it's sometimes necessary to redirect crews. So if you have a crew working in front of your house and they do suddenly pack up and leave, the odds are they've been put on something that is a higher life safety priority. Not that everybody isn't a priority to us, but somebody in danger of losing their life or in extreme peril is going to be our highest priority. And therefore, we will pull them off of a restoration job to respond to that priority call. We do have an improved wires down process here at Pepco, where we do work with our Department of Transportation folks to help clear roads. We also have an emergency services partnership program in which we provide electrical safety training and information to firefighters and first responders, as well as community emergency response teams and other community groups. We've also donated over 60,000 smoke alarms through this program to our first responders in the Pepco service territory. We also have an emergency management response team, or an IMT, which utilizes the National Incident Management Structure, and we activate ahead of, to plan for, and during to respond to major outage events. And now I'm going to turn it over to Pete Peterson.
Hello. So we'll spend a few minutes now talking about system operations. How energy is delivered to you. From the generating plant down through the transmission lines you'll see on those big towers, down to substations, down to further step-down substations, then out into the communities over both aerial lines and underground lines to your homes and businesses. This was one of our original dispatch offices back in 1936. Was down at 10th and E Street in Washington, D.C. We've come a little ways since then. This is about 20 years ago. This was down, these facilities are below ground. This is our dispatch center there. Our dispatchers are operating the system from there. And as you can see through these next couple slides, obviously we've progressed a little bit. If you look at this operator here in front of him, he has a series of 5 screens. On those screens, there's actually his ability to switch out a feeder. If you look at the fourth screen from the left, you can see there that he actually has a display up. That display allows him to actually trip out a feeder or lock out a feeder, and it also allows him to energize that. And the reason we talk about that is because if you're out there in the field and there's a down wire and that operator decides to close that switch back in, that wire then becomes immediately energized with upwards of 13,000 volts. As you can see by this next slide, again, technology is advanced, we've advanced, And those same screens that you've seen now become a little bit larger, a little bit clearer, but they still have the same ability. They still can operate at a moment's notice, either opening a switch or by closing a switch and energizing a feeder, energizing a bus section. So again, there's a tremendous amount of control, and it can be miles and miles away from actually the incident. So that communication that we have with our first responders and always treating a down wire as live is critical. The next slide just simply shows you one of our newer command centers where we're able to respond, as Dean mentioned, to the outages or there's storm or any kind of event that we have on our system. It allows us to bring our incident management team in and focus on those events and how we restore them. System restoration. Pepco, like many utilities, has a priority-based restoration system. We deal with life-threatening situations first. That could be a wire down, an energized wire. It could be a hospital out of power. Those are things that obviously are potentially life-threatening, and we want to deal with those as quickly as possible. Then we look at our bulk power system. And if you remember from the earlier slide, when we were looking at the transmission lines, if we have a transmission line down or a major substation, we need to restore that first because power works its way downstream. So if that sub-transmission is not in, we can't restore the power on a distribution level. From that, we go into the distribution level, which is those substations and feeders that go out into the communities serving your homes or businesses. And we begin to restore those on a case-by-case basis, depending on the number of customers it will restore in the shortest amount of time. Our goal is, once we've dealt with life-threatening situations, we always try to restore the largest number of customers in the shortest amount of time. Our restoration process. In a disaster, the continuity of government and the communities are critical, and Pepco understands that. So our communication with our outside agencies, be that our first responders or our government agencies, is critical because we need to understand what the needs are in the communities, and we build those then into our restoration plan. Our staffing. We have a 24/7, 365 staffing. Our operations centers are always activated. We run crews out of them, as we mentioned, 24/7, 365. Pepco sustains on-property contractors to supplement our workforce. In addition, we have a mutual assistance agreement with several different groups across the country to provide us, again, more additional resources should we need them based on the situation. Outages occur all the time, blue sky days as well as when storms occur. Those can be a situation as a result of weather, a car accident, equipment failure, animals, and other causes. Sometimes those are momentaries. Sometimes we actually schedule outages to improve our restoration and improve our equipment on our system. And then, of course, they could be sustained outages based on inclement weather, hurricanes, thunderstorms, and different types of scenarios. Weather challenges. Weather is always a challenge for any utility, whether it's extreme hot weather, whether it's thunderstorms, hurricanes, winter weather, heavy snows, wet snow, ice accumulation. All those things can negatively impact a utility system. One of the things in the winter months that significantly has an impact on an electrical system is ice accumulation. Anytime you get above 1/4 of an inch of ice accumulation on wires and poles, you start to see a lot of trouble. And that also accumulates on trees. Trees then become an issue because they bend or snap or break, and they obviously impact or can impact the utilities wires and cause outages. Wind, if you incorporate wind on top of that ice, again, another situation which can cause large-scale outages. Summer weather, as we're going through right now in the Washington, D.C. area. High heat, which increases our demand on load. Obviously, impacts of severe weather from either hurricanes or major thunderstorms, windstorms. All of those things can have a significant impact on an electrical system. Here are just some different photos that we have. As you can see there, we talked a little bit about trees coming down, the impact that has on an electrical system. We talked about a distribution feeder. Those are the feeders that serve our communities, that go out to serve our businesses, our homes. Distribution feeders typically carry power distances of between 2 and 20 miles, and they typically carry or supply somewhere between 1,200 to 2,000 customers, depending on the length and the size of the feeder. Schematics of the feeder and a few devices we'd like to show you here. So this schematic basically outlines a feeder that serves a community, and you can see represented by the blue, those are homes. There are also representation there of some businesses, and there are also switches and different devices that we use. What you'll see here is we're going to demonstrate a outage. So the feeder breaker, if that were to trip, those are fuses there, right? All these can cause outages. An open switch would also allows us to deliver power from a different location. So basically we call that backfeeding to restore customers quicker. The service to the actual transformers. Service transformers, which we've seen in just different types. And then the closed switch. And basically this allows us to sectionalize the feeder. So if we have trouble in front of that sectionalizing switch, we can isolate, restore a portion of the feeder, and restore our customers even quicker. This next slide will demonstrate an automatic system reclosure device that will actually help restore the power to our customers quicker. This slide will demonstrate an automatic system reclosure. This device allows the system to diagnose on its own the problem and attempt to restore a portion of the feeder before we ever get a trouble man on the system. Initially, it identifies the fault. The feeder is opened at the station. There's over 1,000 customers out. It opens a switch, opens an additional switch, thereby isolating the fault, closes the switch, and in under 51 seconds has restored 3/4 of the feeder, leaving only the remaining 270 customers out, which the crew will diagnose once they arrive on site. Vegetation management, tree trimming essentially, is a critical part of any maintenance program in a utility. Our tree management program is extensive both at the state and county level. We work on a round-the-year basis to ensure that proper maintenance is maintained between the trees and the power lines. And it's a very effective process when done correctly. Now I'd like to turn it back over to Mr. Dean Hashmall to talk a little bit about communication.
Pepco, as well as many other utilities, want to provide updated information to our customers. When power goes out, we want you to know why, and we want you to know when you'll be restored, as accurately and as quickly as possible. So we try to provide near real-time outage maps, which we'll demonstrate. We provide customer mobile apps for smartphones so that you can see when you'll be restored while you're not at home. We also send liaisons to our EMAs, our emergency management agencies. The reason for that is, if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So we want our emergency management liaisons to work with our emergency management directors so that they can give us feedback on what the counties and those jurisdictions, the counties and other jurisdictions want restored first. We have direct lines of communications to these emergency management agencies and their teams so that we can get critical infrastructure back restored as quickly and safely as possible. On blue sky days, ETRs are generated by an outage management system, and that's based on the number of customer calls. If we get a single call saying that my power is out and nobody else on the street calls, we can pretty much assume that it's either an internal problem or a single wire down to the customer's house. If multiple customers call on the same street, we can make an assumption based on OMS that it's a transformer fuse that is blown. And that also assists us in where we send our crews to start looking for the trouble case. If there are numerous people on one street, not on the same transformer, we can reasonably assume that it's a line fuse that is blown, and we can start looking for trouble there. If we're getting multiple calls from all up and down a circuit, we can reasonably assume that we have an issue with that feeder. Upon arriving on site, our crews will diagnose the problem and provide the system an estimated time of restoration, which will be forwarded through our communication systems to that app on your smartphone. During major events, hurricanes, major storms, where we incur a lot of damage to our system, we do not establish an ETR. We want to get a chance to have boots on the ground, get our crew's eyes on location of the damage so that we can establish a global ETR. As you can see, there are 3 different types of ETRs. You have global, tiered, and individual. Global is what we're expecting most customers and our last customer restored to see. Tiered is based on larger outage groups, and individual ETRs are based on smaller outage groups and individual customer outages. Speaking of that app, all of that again can be found on our outage alerts through our app. Again, most utilities do have these apps. I would highly recommend going to your utility's webpage and looking for the app. Pepco's preparedness strategy, resource allocation, and decision making are aligned with the needs and communities we serve. We provide information that our customers can use to help them prepare. And we plan for weather events year-round via operational training and readiness, technology deployment, second roles for employees. And with second roles, any office personnel who typically do not work out in the field, they don't leave at 4 o'clock after a storm. They're doing second roles, whether it be wire down inspections, wire watching, dispatching. Everybody has a role during a storm, not just the linemen. We're constantly assessing our preparedness strategy with the goal of anticipating the needs of those who we serve and exceeding their expectations. Collaboration in emergency management. As the quote here says, in an emergency, municipalities rely on private sector utility providers to restore and manage utilities. In many cases, municipalities lack the legislative authority to direct the utility companies, which creates coordination, commitment, and communication problems. Where we take this is we want to work with our municipalities. Similar to, we're not experts in Department of Transportation. We're not going to tell them how to repave the roads and what roads need to be addressed. We don't expect them to try to oversee our utility operations. We have a plan, an emergency operations plan that we follow. And within that plan, we do have liaisons that meet at the EMAs. And we do work, as stated earlier, to get the top 5 priorities from our emergency managers. Once you let the emergency management agencies start dictating what the priorities are, you have no priorities. The utility has a responsibility for operation and restoration of the electric system. We're the subject matter experts, and as I've said once or twice before, if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. So, what emergency plan do you have? Again, we want to get to know you before we meet like this. What you saw there was a substation transformer failing next to a golf course, and that was not on our electric system. But again, I don't want to meet the chief at that hazmat scene and be the first time that I've ever met him. Throughout PHI's Emergency Preparedness Department, we conduct annual training and drills, as well as tabletop exercises and functional exercises. Some of those exercises are even included on a national level. These external exercises and drills provide us an opportunity to meet these folks face to face prior to meeting on an incident, like you saw in the prior slide. We also participate in government sponsored exercises. We also have special plans that we utilize, such as our COVID-19 plan, which used to be a pandemic plan, now obviously in COVID-19. We also have labor contingency, so we have 4 different unions here in PHI that we have to plan for. And we have special operations plans, be it for national social security events, such as the State of the Union inaugurations and state funerals, as well as plans for national championship type events. Emergency Preparedness also participates in these special operations that are engaged by EMAs and the Department of Homeland Security and National Capital Region, the FBI, Joint Terrorism Task Force, and the U.S. Secret Service. And again, some of these events I previously mentioned were the State of the Union, the All-Star Game, playoffs, World Series, and World Bank. We also have Operations Security, which coordinates with the groups that you see listed below. So Pepco does provide an essential service to the nation's capital. Therefore, we must constantly work to ensure that we're prepared to respond to any type of crisis. And those crises could be storms, heat, cold, flooding, life safety, voltage reductions, rolling blackouts, system shutdown, and any post 9/11 issues. Pepco has also taken various steps to enhance our emergency preparedness processes by including second roles, which are storm roles, for employees, so that when a storm does hit, employees who typically work in the back office are assisting, be it, again, dispatching, sitting on wires down, or inspecting. We also have improved procedures providing information to our customers, like the mobile website. We've expanded our capacity with the outage management system that you saw earlier, and we have improved wire down processes and development like a life safety task force with Montgomery County Fire and Rescue. We've also been performing enhanced planning and drilling, and we've got enhanced technology platforms. Our coordination includes our incident support team and our enterprise-wide resource management and policies, and we're also an industry leader in the use of ICS. We've coordinated with our emergency management agencies to work with government concerns that need to be vetted, ensure common objectives are met if possible, communicate expectation. We have those EMA liaisons that we send out to vet these individual issues. With the wires down, road closures, and our DDOT and Department of Public Works and Transportation officials. We have assist fire police calls, which we have to answer in the state of Maryland in under 3 hours. And we have priority codes so that when we do communicate with fire rescue, they can let us know if it's a priority 1, a priority 2, or a priority 3 based on life safety. We have task force teams, and we have timed responses. We also have an EOP, or an Emergency Operations Plan, which is vetted every year, and we also have a District of Columbia Major Service Outage Restoration Plan, specifically for Washington, D.C. So first responder safety, very important. What we want our first responders to think about when they come out or interact with our equipment. We want our first responders to operate as safely as possible around our equipment, and not just our equipment, but all utilities, be it electric, natural gas, oil tanks, propane tanks, etc. We definitely want you to think about incoming apparatus, positioning of apparatus, and communications with the utility, be it electric or natural gas or water. Keep in mind wind direction and other exposures and other structures. As far as electrical hazards go, we want you to stay away from downlines. Stay as far away as you can with effectively and safely controlling the scene. Keep apparatus clear of overhead wires, and make sure that when you're throwing a ladder, you're looking up before you're throwing a ladder. As far as structure fires, don't pull meters. If you can get to the load center or panel box, whatever you call it, shut the main breaker off there. Do not pull a meter. Meters aren't switches. What I'm getting ready to show you is a boom truck that got up into a power line, and you're going to see 7,600 volts going to ground through every available path that it can.
remember. I doubt it goes any further than that.
I think it's a beam of some kind.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying that ought to block it. But
Don't watch that. Hey, don't watch that. That's like an arc welder. It'll burn your eyes if you watch that arc.
Why is that important? Each place you saw that electricity going down through those outriggers and to ground was creating something called step potential. So if you look at this silhouette of the individual by the pole, at that location there's 7,600 volts going to ground. Depending on the soil consistency, moisture, and makeup, that voltage is going to drop roughly by half every 3 feet. So 3 feet away you're now at 3,800 volts, 6 feet away you're at 1,900 volts, and that goes until it nulls out. Think back to what I told you earlier about what it takes for your heart to be put into defibrillation and you get a cardiac arrest. It's not much of an amperage, or it's not much amperage. Why is this important? Well, if you look at those colored rings, the minute your feet bridge that gap, you've made a path for that electrical current. And because of that, you've had electricity pass through your body close to internal organs, and that could kill you. Again, meters. I just mentioned meters are not switches. You see all sorts of different kinds of meters in this picture. None of them are switches. All they are is measuring devices. We put power through them, you take that power from us, and that makes that meter spin. There are some meters that you could pull if you were crazy enough to do it, and you're not even going to cut the power off to the residents or the business. So again, do not pull meters. In the next video you're going to see, it's an electrical arc. Why am I showing this to you? It's an interesting video. It's a 500 kV switch somewhere out in the Midwest, I believe it was Nevada, where they had a switch hanging up, and it's a high-speed switch, so that's supposed to snuff the arc. They were trying to videotape it with high-speed cameras so that they could see where the switch was holding up. They switched out the wrong circuit, and what you're going to see here is a rather large arc. So why is that important? Similar to pulling meters, electricity is going to try to maintain that flow. You go and pull that meter, and that load hasn't been broken somewhere where it's meant to be turned off at. That electricity is going to continue to try to contact that meter, and you could get an electrical arc. It's not going to be that large, but that's a larger scale of what you could be faced with. So again, avoid pulling meters. I'm going to show you some substations. And again, as mentioned previously, although this is Pepco specific, this is industry-wide. Every utility has a substation. One of the differences though, Pepco has won numerous awards for making our substations fit into the community. We have one that actually has a silhouette of a cat and a family eating dinner in the front window with a light that turns on behind it in the evening. Again, we want to make these substations fit into the community because we want them to be aesthetically pleasing for the neighbors around. But what I want you to understand as a first responder is that we don't want you in our substations. There's nothing in there that can be saved if there is a fire. There's nothing in there that we can reuse if there's been a fire or any kind of major catastrophe. So there's no reason to be dragging hose line into one of our substations. What you see in the first picture to the left is just basically an industrial type building. And once you pull up on scene or location, you'll see danger high voltage signs. It's a pretty good indication that you're at one of our substations that's made to look like something in the community. The bottom picture is more of a traditional substation that you'd see at other utilities. Here's the inside of the substation or control house. The most hazardous thing in there other than the voltage would be the DC batteries to the right. All of our substations are controlled by direct current or DC, battery voltage. And that allows us to continue to control our substations even after we lose power to them, which we do during major events. You'll see the control panels to the left, and in the very bottom picture are breaker cabinets. The picture you see on the left here is an actual substation breaker. It's about the size of a soda machine, and it controls 13,000 volts. And that's the picture to the bottom right of the back of it. And then you've got your relay up top. And what that does is actually talks to our control center with the pictures that Pete showed you earlier, where we can control our feeders and lock them out. It's actually talking to that device. Substation transformers. What you're looking at here is a 69,000 volt to 13,000 volt transformer. This takes a sub-transmission voltage, steps it down through some coils, and makes it 13,000 volts so that we can send that out into our distribution. Just showing you some comparison for size. You've got an individual standing there. It's rather large. There's a lot of oil in there. That's our insulating agent. And one of the things that I want you to keep in mind, and I'll show you, it's in this picture, but it's also in this picture, which is just a slightly larger transformer, is that gravel, that pit that transformer's sitting on. Our pits, our oil retainment pits, are designed to hold 110% of the product. So if that transformer were to leak, if it were to rupture, and that oil were to drain down into it, and you were to come in and start, first responders come in and start putting foam and product on that oil to put a fire out, you're now forcing that product out of that containment pit and making an environmental hazard. So again, there's really nothing you can do to assist us once one of these things fail. And they do fail, as you saw in that picture from the golf course. They can fail catastrophically like that, or they can just pop like a light bulb for all intents and purposes and stop working. The last video we're going to show you was videotaped through Baltimore Gas and Electric. It's of an individual who was doing a side job, cutting some trees down, and ended up getting the tree into a 34,000 volt sub-transmission feeder, which dropped into a 13,000 volt feeder. And basically what you were doing was energizing equipment that was meant to take 13,000 volts with 34,000 volts. That tree limb dropped into the 34,000 volt line and then into the 13,000 volt line, and all that 13 kV or 13,000 volt equipment took an induced voltage of 34,000 volts and transferred it through there. So now instead of getting 120 volts to your house, it was exponentially higher. And you'll see in the video eventually the gutters start arcing on the house. The service wire gets so hot that it's smoking and smoldering and starting to melt down. And the firefighters there do the exact right thing. They stay away and they wait for the utility. No different than one of these substations either. We want you to handle it like a hazmat event. We want you to deny entry, establish a perimeter, and protect exposures.
Trying not to really show it. I'm afraid I'm going to burn my lens up. I can see it right on the edge. Without looking at it.
Get me down.
A couple of the lines are broke.
explained to you at the beginning of this tape that this was caused by a tree limb being accidentally cut on the line by the operator of that bucket truck. You can see the tremendous flash and the available voltage and amperage that's available there. And as you saw the hot line demonstration at the beginning, this is what is happening with the recloser effect. It just keeps opening and closing the line. Every time it closes the line, you get this big ball of fire rolling up in the air. Just watch it for a few minutes.
Catch on fire stuff. There goes the lines.
Okay, you've been watching some of the awesome power of electricity. There's no trick. That's just exactly what it'll do. And you see the firefighters on the scene, but they're staying back away from the houses. They've got their fire extinguishers, but they're not using them. They're just being very cautious. Basically what they're doing is trying to keep everybody away from the scene. This is the exact correct thing to do. Keep everybody aware of the situation, keep them away from the area, and let the power company do the handling of the wires and make the situation safe. That way everybody comes out a winner.
This is unbelievable. I don't know, John.
So thank you for your time today. We hope you learned something. And if you have any questions, we really wouldn't mind answering your questions. Please reach out. My number is on the screen. I prefer email. We are currently not in the office, but we hope to be back soon. But if you leave a message, I will get back to you as soon as I can. Otherwise, please send me the email with any questions, and I will do my best to get back to you.
Thank you for your time and attention today, and be safe.
Thank you.